before the Raya vacation. We're looking at two novels. We're looking at The Yellow Bird, and we're comparing it against The Corpse Washer. So we've discussed The Corpse Washer before the midterm break. And all of you have your own respective angles from which you are discussing The Corpse Washer, looking at it from respective thematic focus and concerns. And my assignment to you was for you to then look at The Yellow Bird from the other perspective, from the outsider's perspective, right? So, I don't want to waste our time. So let's just get started. Who wants to begin first? So what I'm hearing, what I would like to hear is your take on the two novels. Begin by looking at the points of convergence that you have identified, and then exploring it from the Yellow Bird's perspective. If it is if the take that you are identifying is different from what we discussed on The Corpse Washer, you may also bring in your take on The Corpse Washer and see how they converge, right? How they are similar, how they are different, okay? Who wants to go first? Okay, Salim has put up. Salim, do you want to go first or do you have a question?
Sorry, do you hear me, Doctor?
Yes. Do you want to go first?
Doctor, sorry?
Say that again.
Do you hear me?
You're breaking up. Right now I hear you fine. Just now you were breaking up. So would you like to start the discussion?
Yes, first, Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. According to Iraq, it's a morning. Sorry, Doctor. And I don't know, there is something wrong with my computer today. That's why I'm using my mobile phone, Doctor. The thing that I have noticed during my, reading to The Yellow Bird was there was a big contradiction, in fact, between the ideas of this novel. Since I'm from Mosul, I'm from Nineveh. I'm originally from Nineveh, and I have noticed that there are mistake, information about Al-Tafar. Since if you go on Google, you will not find Al-Tafar. Number one. Number two, because there is a district called Tal Afar. If you go and check it on the Google, you will find that Tal Afar is a district away from Mosul, about, like, let me say 20 to 25 minutes by car, in fact. So and something else, by the way, I have watched the movies as well, the movie of Yellow Bird as well, and the thing that they show palm trees and orchid, different types of orchid, and they were moving in places. It was so strange for me, because in the north of Iraq, where I am, there is no palm trees. Number one. Number so this is what I have noticed during my watching the movie. Something else that he said, that war kill all people. I mean, innocent and guilty at the same time. And I have noticed that Bartle and Morphy, most of them, they joined the army by their own will. But when they came to Iraq, the situation was different, and they started to, it was in my point of view, they have, made the situation for them, as if you say, they made it, they said that the way to Iraq is paved with the gold. This is my opinion. But when they came to the reality, it was not like that. It was all death and killing and so and so and so. And I have witnessed that. I have witnessed, in Iraq, that the message has been, converted to them mistakenly. And when they came to Iraq, they faced a different situation, and they kill innocent people. And that's why if you look closely to the situation of Bartel, you will see that not Bartel also. Go to the sergeant, which is stealing, who killed himself at the end. What does this message convert? It means that they are traumatized. They are traumatized. They become sick because of what? Because they faced death, and they faced, they're traumatized. They killed innocent people. And if I'm not mistaken, when I was, let me say, 25, 26 years old, after I graduated from my college at that time, I have heard that people who are taking part in torturing people and killing people, most of them at the end, they usually, became become, psychologically, sick. So in my point of view, that most of the people who are taking part in Iraq, let me, soldiers, are traumatized, and they are having flashbacks. If you see that, they're all the time remembering, actions. But if the issue was fair according to the American, context, I don't believe that something like that is going to happen to the soldiers. So when you feel that your message is a true message, is sacrificing yourself for the sake of your country, is blah blah blah, I don't believe that this will lead to having bad flashbacks and bad nightmares and so on. So most of the thing that happened to here was flashbacks. In fact, something else I have noticed, doctor, that the events of this novel is not arranged. So go to chapter 2, you will find that Morphy has been killed, while this is something. And then you go, you will find that he's talking about Morphy and he's still alive. So all this message gave to me, some, in fact, different. There is a big difference between what talking of the events, or let's say telling the events concerning to Sinan Anton. If you go back to Sinan Anton, you will find that everything is arranged. Everything is as if you are walking up a hill, starting from a very low, then to a sharp turning up. So the case is in fact is very different. And I find that the whole story is about what we call it in English, remorse, a kind of remorse or qualm, as we said, remorse. So they are feeling guilty, and most of them are traumatized, and you will see that many mistakes happened to them. They killed innocent people, and wallah, I swear by God, this has happened in front of my eyes when I was in Mosul. Their strikers, they call it strikers. I mean the Humvee, or the vehicles who are fighting. They run over civilian cars, and they killed five people inside the car. And nobody asked them why do they do that? Nobody care, and nobody at that time dare to say why you kill that, why you say that. That's why I feel that most of them are traumatized, and they were killing innocent people. And the message was converted to them was not real a message, because in America, this is in my opinion, they told them that you're gonna travel to you're gonna go fight an enemy in Iraq and blah blah blah, and they give them a message which is but when they came to the reality, it was not like that, doctor. Thank you so much. This is the starting of my talking to about that. Inshallah, I will take part in another discussions with you, Dr. Sad. Thank you.
When you talk about the remorse and you talk about trauma not caused by others abusing you, but trauma caused by the abuse you inflict on others. There's this scene from Macbeth, the Shakespeare's play, in which after he kills the king, he begins to fall from grace, and he begins to suffer from remorse, and he begins to basically lose his sanity. I think that theme of loss of sanity because of guilt is as old as literature, is as old as storytelling, right? Habil and Qabil had that, that kind of, when the brother killed his brother, when one killed his brother and the remorse he felt, that's as old as life itself. So the theme is very much true. So that is the reading of Yellow Birds. So I concur with you in that sense. So if you were reading Yellow Birds in isolation, you can take on the theme of remorse, right? Now, because we are doing comparative literature, you're going to be able to find that the theme of remorse will be a little bit more difficult to compare, because it's not apples and apples, because you're not comparing remorse against another text in which crime has been committed and remorse is experienced, right? So I take that the theme of remorse is very strong in the Yellow Bird. I take that, and the triangulation of the three characters, Bartle, Murphy, and Sterling, and how that trauma, quote unquote trauma, reverse trauma, if you like, because they inflicted trauma on the Iraqis and they inadvertently suffered the trauma, right? So akin to Macbeth killing King Duncan and him suffering the consequence of it because he is feeling guilty, and guilt eats him up alive, and his wife goes crazy, Lady Macbeth goes crazy. So that I understand that, and I see the relevance of that, right? So when you commit a crime, even if you're not punished, even if you don't get caught by it, it will still hurt you, right? So that human conscience will kind of inflict that trauma onto you, a reverse process of it. But if we want to compare this novel against The Corpse Washer, we need to find themes that are more closely associated with each other. Or you find another text in which to compare the same theme of remorse within the context of war, for instance, to compare to. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I take your reading of Yellow Birds in terms of the theme you have identified, but you would need to find another text that is more suitable. Otherwise, it would be like comparing apples with oranges. It's a bit more difficult because the point of convergence is not strong enough. Right? So the whole point of looking at this from a comparative literature perspective is for us to be able to see the universal themes across time and space, across national literary canons, right? So you don't want to make the theme so difficult to be compared to that it becomes a challenge to make the comparison between the two novels. But having said all that, you mentioned about discrepancies, how the localities mentioned in Iraq is not authentic enough. And you talked about the movie depiction as well, the discrepancies there, the palm trees, the depiction is not authentic enough. That in itself already leads to question the outsider's perspective of Iraq, right? So you may compare from that perspective. That means you may compare from an outsider's perspective of Iraq and how many discrepancies there are compared to an insider's perspective of Iraq, i.e. Sinan Anton's depiction of Iraq. So from that point, yes, there is a point of convergence there, because you are looking at what is the point of convergence? The depiction of Iraq and how Iraq and its people and its landscape is depicted, right? So if you want to compare from that trajectory, yes, you may. And that in itself is a parameter. You're looking at area studies. You're looking at the geographical landscape of Iraq and how Iraq is depicted from an insider's perspective. You know, the close understanding of the land and the movement of the land caused by war, right? And you from an outsider's perspective. So that would be unique, because that would be a reading that has not been done in terms of these two novels, because the reading of these two novels has been primarily from the perspective of war. But looking at the, as you have identified, the discrepancies, right, in terms of the authentic depiction of the landscape, that would be original. So if you are interested in looking at that, you know, that would be, I would say that would be a good one to explore. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Who's next? Good job, by the way. That was a good reading. Yes. Who would like to go next?
I'd like to go next because my theme is actually quite similar.
Go ahead.
All right. So as I'm not sure if you guys can recall, but I went hard on death. So I'm going to continue talking about death and identity. Yeah. So let me just share my screen because I have a few passages on my Word. All right. Okay. Can you guys see my Microsoft Word? Is it big enough?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I think the doctor mentioned a lot about perspectives. So I think what we can conclude is that the corpse washer provides perspective on war from a civilian's eyes, or the corpse washer, whereas the yellow birds really provided everything from a soldier's point of view, and what more, a soldier who is American. So I noticed that the first thing I noticed is that characters from both novels, they had to deal with death and confront death every single day. It has become so monumental, so frequent, that perhaps they have gotten numb to it. I noticed this happening in Corpse Watcher, when every day our hero, our main character, had just he had to do it. So as a result, he got this nightmares of the angel of death. In Yellowbirds, they also have to confront it every day. But then the main difference, as Doctor mentioned just now, they are the one causing the death. So what death indicates, or what death symbolizes for the soldiers, I find, is the main difference. So here I have a few. I'm not sure, because I'm using EPUB, so I'm not sure which page the passages are from, but let me just show you the bolded one. So I think our main character, Bartel, in the novel, he's 21 years old. So the way he sees things, I find, is very not simple, but very simplified, because he's young and he's being thrusted into this very traumatizing, violent situation. So for him, life and death is an everyday occurrence, and he had to make it transactional to deal with it. So as you can see in the first passage here, the bolded, just look at the bolded sentence. How are you going to save my life today? Dying would be one way. If you die, it becomes more likely that I will not. So that is how he viewed it. So if his soldier friends died, so he would not. based on maybe the numbers of fatalities on that day itself. And then there's also this sentence: we thought if we remain ordinary, we would not die. So I guess because I'm not a soldier, but I'm assuming for a lot of soldiers, if they just lay low, if they do not take risks, perhaps the chances to survive can become higher. So I noticed, okay, so for them, because they are, I mean, obviously they're very scared of it. So they're always wondering, maybe when people say, oh, 10 fatalities today, will I be one of those fatalities tomorrow? So I think the fear is there. So that is why, whether they like it or not, for them, okay, if you die, that means I can survive. All right. So I noticed that perhaps that mindset um, became an affirmation of their soldier life. So this is mentioned in this passage. I think this is directly after the previous passage. So this passage reads, of course, we were wrong. Our biggest error was thinking that it mattered what we thought. It seems absurd now that we saw each death as an affirmation of our lives, that each one of those deaths belonged to a time and therefore that time was not ours. And then and then the last sentence of that paragraph: I used to think that maybe living under that contradiction has guided my actions, and that one decision made or unmade in adherence to this philosophy would have put me on or kept me off the list of the dead. So for the soldier, for Bartel, he has this list of the dead, but then he could be included in one of those lists because he's a soldier and he's involved in the killing and the ending of lives. Compared to the main character in The Corpse Watcher, he is the one dealing with the aftermath, not directly involved in combat. So yes. So when they started looking at death as some sort of an affirmation, we have this really violent soldier. Sterling, I think, is the name. So it was mentioned. Bartel said that if you look at the next paragraph, because Sterling was so violent, he can be a maniac because he can just kill people quite easily, so to speak. As a soldier, he's considered great. Uh, so his stature among soldiers is considered higher because of how good he is at his job. Unfortunately, so in this passage, it's mentioned. The author wrote, "I hated him. I hated the way he excelled in death and brutality and domination. But more than that, I hated the way he was necessary, how I needed him to jar me into action even when they were trying to kill me, how I felt like a coward until he screamed into my ear." So I notice here, I didn't know that death is something that you can be excellent in. Uh, but yes, but in the novel, I think for the soldiers, it became some sort of a validation of your life. So I wonder if this is just a coping mechanism. So linking back to what Salim said, that's trauma, and perhaps this is some sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder. So in order for them to cope with their everyday life, always holding guns, always having to be very suspicious and cautious in every step, they have started to look at death as, okay, we just, if it happens and if you're good at it, you are considered excellent, which is for me a little bit a very violent way to live. And then is it nearing the end? So I think nearing the end, I think when Murphy died, so when they found Murphy's body, so they were so shocked because even though they have seen multiple deaths, Iraqi's death, but for them, Murphy's death hit different. So the passage reads, "I took my Wooby out of my bag and covered him. I couldn't look anymore. Most of us had seen death in many forms. Slick mess after a suicide bomber, headless bodies gathered in a ditch like a collection of broken dolls on a child's shelf, even our own boys sometimes, bleeding and crying as it became apparent that the sound of a Casabet was 30 seconds too far in the distance. But none of us had seen this." So I noticed there is a different way of them viewing death when they are the one inflicting it, and when they saw death happening to Murphy, who's actually one of theirs. So so I think the difference in how they deal with the end of lives, with lives lost among them, is the thing that strikes me the most in the book. So I think the life, being soldier and being civilians, those two are also the main the perspectives that really intensifies the way I read the book and the way I view the story. Okay, that's all, Doctor. That's my take on the novel. I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, when you started, first of all, well done. I thought that was a very focused discussion of the two novels. You picked on one aspect, right? You ignored everything else. You just picked on one aspect. And that aspect, you took it through from the corpse washer, and now you're comparing it with the yellow birds. So that was very focused. That's the kind of focused analysis we need to do for comparative literature in order to find significance, right? That doesn't mean you have covered every aspect of both novels, but it means that you are doing a more focused reading in order to see the relevance of the theme that you have identified in the American literary canon compared to the Iraqi literary canon, right? So there is significance there, but there is also limitation. So when you were talking about that, this is something we can all do. Just Google on one theme. So I Google on the question, how should one view death? So as you were talking, I started Googling on that. So I came across this article. And this is an opinion based on the current pandemic. How do you view death, especially given the kind of situation the unprecedented situation we are facing in the world today? So in the corpse washer, the death that is experienced is experienced at the scale of the national level, specifically due to the war that is being brought to Iraq, right? And in Yellowbirds, the perspective is from death also caused or perpetrated by war at the hands of the American soldiers, right? But it's not the suffering of the Iraqis that is being mourned, but rather the suffering of their soldiers, right? That's being mourned. So in this context, in this article's context, it is more with regards to the current situation, the pandemic, and the number of deaths that is being suffered or being experienced at the national level. Okay, so it's a very current theme if you think about it. And the point I'm bringing to you is that it is a very current theme. So the idea of how we both view death, so some research questions, some possible questions that may trigger you to explore further if you're interested. How do we view death? What kind of imageries are seen? So you have the old man, I think Shah mentioned him in her reading of the corpse washer, if I'm not mistaken. How is death viewed here? The first couple of paragraphs of Yellowbirds signals death as this larger than life, signals war as this larger than life force personified, right? How is death viewed? So you may look at it from that trajectory, the imageries of death, symbolisms and imageries of death in both novels. How is death viewed? And by default, how then is the life that is available viewed? Is there any way to appreciate life given the glaring magnitude of death? Is there any way to appreciate life? How does Sinan approach that from the corpse washer's perspective, from Jawad's perspective? How does Kevin Powers view that from not just Barthel's perspective, but also from Murphy's perspective? If you think about it, he rather chose death because it was driving him up. He was losing his marbles. He's losing his mind, right? All the killing at his hands, back to the remorse that the remorse that Macbeth felt in the killing of the King Duncan, right? So the remorse you feel is inevitable, right? So how do you experience life if you have that guilt that overrides your sanity, right? So what is the solution, if you like? How do you live? Even Bartel himself couldn't live with the guilt that he felt, not the guilt of killing that took place, but the guilt of ignoring Murphy and not bringing him home and kind of just washing him off as if he died in war. So that guilt. So there is that element that you may compare. So my point is that it is a very current theme. So if you were to explore this, you will find that it is a theme that resonates with a lot of discussion, not necessarily in the context of war, but it is something that is definitely applicable to what's being discussed. That I think maybe Salim might not be within this purview of discussion, but most of us, we live in such peaceful context that we don't consider death unless it's by accident or by illness or old age, right? You don't consider death as a given, as an everyday given, because we live in a relatively peaceful context. Unless you're a doctor, you're working in the hospital, in the emergency unit perhaps, or in a critical department, like cancer patients or whatever, where you see death on a kind of more regular basis. But the rest of us, it's not. However, the theme of death, given the current unprecedented scenario that we are experiencing, pockets of the world, death is happening on a daily basis. You get notification about the percentage of or the population who have died today because of pandemic, and that's scary. So death then becomes a number that you get on your Telegram or WhatsApp. So it's like death now. What has become of death? So how should we view death? So there is that element. So I think definitely if you consider pursuing this for your second assignment, you may do this. And you've got something already. So I would say pursue it and see how far you can take this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. I was very interested. I didn't plan to be interested in death, but but what I find interesting is that because I also like to read books on other religions. So Buddhism and Hinduism view death very differently. So Buddhism considers death to be a natural part of being, because for them, they believe in reincarnation and the transportation of the mind. But for us, it is almost like the judgment day. You will be judged or measured by the good deeds and the bad deeds that you do. So yes, thank you so much for that. But the two books you chose are very good, and I think they are, traumatizing reads, but really impactful.
Yeah, but I mean, jokes aside, I mean, I'm glad you all enjoyed it, but it cannot be. You cannot bring in the religious lens. Unfortunately, you can't bring in the religious lens because if you notice, both books don't deal with the theme of religion overtly. Right, so you can't suddenly introduce a kind of religious perspective, which is why you notice I did not say how would a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist view death, because the story doesn't deal with it from that perspective, right? Even Jawad, who is a corpse washer, deals with it as a ritual of cleansing them before they are being buried. He doesn't approach it from that religious perspective. So I wouldn't color your reading from that trajectory. I wouldn't, but stick to what you have looked at, which is the impact of death from a civilian perspective, i.e. insider again, and from a soldier, an outsider, right?
Yeah.
A soldier not within the Iraqi context, but
Yeah.
a soldier from the outside perspective. So that would be impactful. All right, well
Great,
done.
Doctor, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, who'd like to go next?
Dr. Kai, go next. My topic is quite similar with Ruby's. Yeah.
Okay, Ken, Alice, and after that, Lisa. Lisa put up her hand. So Lisa will come to you next. Ken? Is that okay?
Yeah, Doctor, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Go ahead, Alice.
My topic is about mental dice. I found the definition of mental dice in an article. Mental dice is characterized by loss of core beliefs and values and distrust and alienation from others, shame and guilt and signs of being permanently damaged. And the mental dice can cause bad torture. For in the two novels, the first the copper washer, the mental dice, Java when Java wash bodies and seeing others that he is suffering the torture of seeing others dies, and for the yellow bird, the Berto and Murphy, they are suffering not only seeing others die but also killing others. But for example, when the translator died in the war, and the only thing they focus is on the only thing they focus on is that the number, no one can counting number for them. I think in the two novels I want to compare with the mental dice, the kind of mental dice when after war as a Java, and the kind of mental dice as a soldier who is killing others, and but in the yellow bird it also has they also suffering seeing others dies, but when death becomes becomes number, they seems indifferent to death, but when Muff died, Berto seems like he lost his companion, and it's a kind of mental dice, yeah, and because I just finishing the Yellow Bird, and I think I should watch the movie version, and I want to find the point that they start to being indifferent to dice in the two novels. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, because it's quite similar with Ruby's and Salim's. Yeah, my comment is very short.
Okay. I'm assuming when you say you found an article, this is the article in question, because when I Googled it, this was the first thing that came up. Was this the article?
Yes, doctor, this is the article.
Yeah. So I read this. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So the definition of mental death, as seen from this perspective, at least from this article's, perspective, is characterized by, and I quote, loss of core beliefs and values, distrust, alienation from others, shame and guilt, and a sense of being permanently damaged. So, if you use that definition and explore the discussion into mental death further, you may begin to see, similarities and differences between the two novels. The first question to ask is, what was the core value or values? Because if mental death is the loss of core values, using Pierre Macheret's, this notion of the unsaid or silences, you may ask texts, you may ask the novels you're reading, what was the core values before this? So when they experience death on a daily, regular basis, Jawad as a corpse washer, and Bathel and the other soldiers on a daily basis as a soldier in the context of war, what was their core value prior to that? And that's where the beauty of the Yellow Birds is, that it allows you to see the before, the situation in Iraq, and the after, right? So it's not told in a kind of a linear fashion that way. So there is a kind of back and forth and back and forth. So in your mind, it's almost like you are in a state of confusion because you're constantly oscillating between the past, the present, and almost in the context of a future possibility in his mind, right? So always back and forth, past and present, right? So because of that situation, you can ask yourself, what was the core value of one of the characters that you want to identify? It could be Bartha. What was his core value? Like Ruby said just now, 21 years old. These are slightly younger than all of you here, right? So what do you think your core value is at this age, right? To what? Have fun, go out with friends, spend time with friends, maybe, get your education, get a good job, maybe, I don't know, what else? What are some of your core values right now as 20-year-olds? I haven't been 20 in a long time, so I've forgotten.
Like, don't be troubling others.
Okay. Don't give others trouble. Most probably your parents lah.
Yeah, to become economic independence. Yeah.
Right. So have financial security. So start to develop financial security, right? So you're not relying on your parents, right? You're not thinking about death. At least not within most of our contexts, right? So look at if you're comparing the yellowbirds and corpse washer from this perspective of the mental death, you will have to do a before and after reading. You may choose like Jawad for sure from the corpse washer. What was he like before he had to be the corpse washer? He was thriving. He was loving life. He had dreams. He had ambition. So what was his core values before and beliefs, and what were the core values after, and how has there been a shift? The same with Bartel, right? What was his core value before? So they were almost the same age, if you like, when this trauma hit them hard and the shift happened, but from two different contexts, from the American context, right, and from the Iraqi context. So you may actually take this discussion, and again, it will be a unique reading, because I've done a bit of research on the Yellowbird and Corpse Washer for the papers I'm working on with my friend, as I was telling you, but I've not read a perspective like that, specifically looking at the mental death, comparing it. The Yellowbird maybe, because Murphy's reading of Murphy's character for that perspective has been significant, but comparing it from the Iraqi perspective and the American soldiers' perspective, that is unique. So what we're trying to do when we're doing our assignments is, this is something I want you all to kind of focus on. What I'm trying to do is get you to focus on an issue that is unique, that is original, rather than repeat what others are saying. I want you to try to, even if it's just like what Ruby was doing just now, just picking on one element, which is the impact of death on the two characters, you should still be able to make it original and unique. Yeah. So Alex, I would suggest that for you. and for your seminar, next week's seminar. I mean, not next week, but you know, don't lose your cool. Everyone's like, huh? Next week? Oh my God, help! You know, so yeah. So not next week, but the seminar, the upcoming seminar, that will be unique. You know, pursue it with one character in mind from the Yellowbirds and obviously from the Cotswasher. Fuzla, you wanted to say something? You've got your hands up.
Oh no, I must have wrongly pressed the button. Sorry.
Okay, that was a Freudian slip. You wanted to say something, but you're not sure whether you wanted to say something, and you accidentally press on the raise hand button. Okay, never mind. But Alice, do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm suggesting?
Yes, Doctor. I think it's very interesting, and I think I want to compare the two novels from this perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So consider the core values of these two characters outside the context of the trauma faced because of the war. Yeah, and compare it with the loss of values then. Okay. Thank you so much. Shah, you're next. Oh, sorry, not Shah. Lisa, you were there. Lisa was there, and then now there's a switch. How do you all switch? Like, do you all like switch roles, or because Lisa was sitting here in my screen, and suddenly Lisa's on the left hand side.
I think it depends on who's talking, so it goes up.
Oh, cool.
I think
cool.
so.
Cool. Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So like Ruby and Salim, actually, I pinpointed like death as the main theme of both of the novels and the casualties of war. And because there's a lot that talks about how they deal with death and how death was described in both of these novels. Death was described very vividly. For example, like in the Yellowbirds about Murphy's death, it was quite horrid, really, how they described how his ears and his nose was missing, it was cut off, and how his head was only left with his vertebrae intact. But after actually reading the Yellowbirds, I was kind of more interested in, because one of the questions that was raised after I finished reading the novel is what makes a hero, the concept of what makes a hero and what makes a murderer. So even after the war, after all the killings and stuff, Bata did think himself as a hero, even though that was what everyone around him was telling him, that he was doing some good stuff because he was killing those Iraqi bastards and whatnot, to the point that he even refused free drinks because he didn't think that he deserved it. And when I think of heroes, I think of heroes. The work of heroes is saving lives, but how do you say? But Bata, he didn't save life. There was actually nothing that he was protecting. Why was he going to war? Why was he going? Why did he kill people? There was like no distinct no end goal to him. He wasn't saving lives. But in that sense, if we look at Jawad in the Cotswasher, was he a hero in some sense? Because he didn't save life, but he dealt with dead people, but he was also the medium in which between dead people and their afterlife. So he was that pomegranate tree that sucks out the blood from dead people. So yeah, now that I think about it, I think Jawad was a hero in some sense of the word. Yeah. And also between the two novels, the Yellowbirds focuses more on the feeling of guilt, but the Cotswasher, there wasn't much of the guilt he felt because Jawad really had done nothing. He didn't kill people and whatnot. But I think one of my favorite characters in the Yellowbirds was Sterling, because his ending was so unexpected. It was revealed in the novel that his heart was never really in it. When one of his superiors said to him that he could become a poster boy for recruitment of soldiers, he said that he wouldn't want anyone to do what he did. And then that also ended in suicide. So Sterling dealt with his guilt with suicide. And Murphy, I think even before he was killed, he somehow already died on the inside. So it was like an attempted suicide. He knew he was going for suicide. I don't think he was in his right mind, because he walked out naked by crawling through the hole. And throughout this guild, they try to keep the little morality they had by not killing children. Yeah. So like Alice had said, at what point, that's also like an interesting, at what point does the heart become dead? Yeah. So Jawad escapes using art. The soldiers, I think they escape through not thinking. They just shut off those emotional field, and so they become numb to all those killing. And to Jawad, death was his companion. And death's companion was Jawad. For Batal and the gang, they were the cause of death. And even at one point, death was Batal's goal because he tried to drown himself, right? Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant, Lisa. You gave a lot of different things, so I'm just gonna unpack a few, and I'm gonna suggest something which I think is spot on for you. Okay, so let's talk about the text. So you looked at the novel and you kind of like brainstorm by the sound of it for me. You brainstormed various things that you felt stood out in the novel, right? So you talked about death, and you talked about casualties of war. You talked about Murphy's death. Just a second.
So when are we doing the seminar again? Because I have no clue.
Maybe 2 weeks after.
2 weeks, right? So it's like a presentation? Oh God.
Yeah, it's a presentation.
Sorry, yes. I hate it when I lose my train of thought. Okay, never mind. All right, so my daughter wanted to say something, so I had to stop. Okay, so what Lisa, yeah, okay. So you talked about death, you talked about casualties of war, you talked about Murphy's death, and then you talked about what makes a hero and what makes, you didn't say the word villain, but what makes a villain, right? So you were thinking about that. And then you moved on into how soldiers deal with death, and that quote, what point does the heart, what's the point that the heart becomes dead? You know, what's the point that happens when the heart becomes dead? So you covered various things, but out of all that, I feel the gem is, wait for it, drum roll, everybody. I think there is something here when you talk about the characteristics of a hero, you know. So I just googled this. Basically, you know, what makes a hero? Exactly what you said. So the characteristics of a hero, and one of the things that drew my attention is this. According to researchers, empathy and compassion for others are key variables that contribute to heroic behavior. So, by that perspective alone, if you think about it, seeing it from that perspective alone, to what extent are Jawad and Murphy, or even Jawad and Bathel, exhibit empathetic and caring behavior? That is by definition of a hero. So not hero as we see it, which is exactly what you say. Somebody who is protective, right? Somebody who takes care, not somebody who goes out and kills, somebody who sets themselves out to defend. So if you look at Barthel, for instance, to what extent does he exhibit empathy and this caring nature towards his own kind? He does. Towards Murphy, he does. There are many scenes when Murphy exhibits a kind of a loss of hope, and Bartel is the one who is constantly reminding him, and because he made a promise to Murphy's mother. He shouldn't have, but he made a promise that, you know, he will take care of Murphy and he will bring him home and all the rest of it. When he couldn't keep that promise, right? Nobody can, especially if you're going off to war. But by that definition of a hero is one who exhibits empathy and compassion for others, right? You have these characteristics in both Bathel and of course in Jawad, which is why to an extent Jawad loses himself. Jawad goes to the extent of becoming so empathetic that he becomes an empath. He feels what others are feeling to the extent that he no longer has his own senses, right? So that is something worth considering. Let me just share this, sorry. So what is an empath? So basically, an empath is, somebody who is so affected by other people's trauma that they take on that trauma as their own. Right? It's not a healthy characteristic to have. It's not a healthy characteristic to live on. So an empath is someone who is highly aware of the emotions of those around them to the point of feeling those emotions themselves. Right, so they take on, if you like, they take on. So you can compare Jawad with Murphy and the level of empath that they both exhibit, right? Murphy to the extent that he loses his mind, Jawad to the extent that he becomes apathetic. He loses the ability to be joyful about life. So there definitely, again, that is unique. If you compare those two characters, looking specifically on that notion of being an empath, both not hero, not villain. You cannot classify them as either, because they are neither the heroes of their story nor the villains of the story, right? But you may look at them from the perspective of an empath and how they are consumed by the pain and the ugliness that they see, that they lose hope about their own life and they stop, quote unquote, stop living. Murphy, by losing his mind and getting himself killed, and Jawad by almost, I don't know, how would you think of Jawad? Has he lost hope at the end of the story? Is there any glimmer of hope left? So that is definitely a discussion worth having, I think, for your seminar at least, if not, writing. I can already see a possible paper, but yeah, let's not go there. I see papers everywhere. Any discussion anybody comes up with, I'm like, okay, that's a huge paper. Salim, you wanted to say something?
Yes, doctor. Do you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, doctor. So a question to doctor, in fact, and to all the friends. Do you believe that death is life for others? Here, a question raises in myself, in my mind, that I want to ask this question: is death for Jawad, or is death for example, Bartle, is life? This is something came to my mind because I saw that when he was washing cups, the water of washing cups go to the pomegranate tree. So this means the death of somebody is, as you say, the trash of somebody is a treasure for somebody else.
Right.
And the same case with the Bartle, who threw the body of his friend Murphy in the water. What does this convey? What does this mean? I do believe that he may, I don't know, maybe this is my opinion. Maybe he thinks that his body is going to be a food for other creatures, like fish, like other creatures in the sea. So I find that there is a kind of similarity between the message of death between the two characters, Bartle and Jawad as well. Thank you, doctor.
I like the point about like washing of the dead body. The water then becomes nourishment for trees. So one person's loss is another one's gain, or you may look at the kind of the way the cycle of life works. That there will be life and there will be death, and death may beget life. Right? Death doesn't mean the end. Death begets life. So that notion of death begetting life may be taken as a metaphor in both contexts, that death needed to happen for new life to emerge. But when you say it that way, it sounds very hopeful. It sounds like there is a kind of a silver lining to this whole experience called death and dying. Do you find that in both novels? If you do, then there is a point of comparison, right? Because that sounds more hopeful. But do you find rather that these two novels are more tragic in tone rather than hopeful and it allows for that kind of glimmer of hope to come through. So I like your point, and these are things you may probe further, maybe not necessarily in these two novels, right? Because if you find these two novels present a more tragic, maybe even more bleak perspective with regards to death, you may find other novels that are more hopeful, but not necessarily set within the context of war, for instance, right? So you may discuss, you may explore that. But I like that idea of how the water that washes the dead body nourishes the tree, the pomegranate tree. So it, in a sense, it there is a kind of hope. But if only Jawad had left Iraq, I would see that as a possibility, meaning that metaphor is taken through in Jawad's life. But because he couldn't, and he got caught and he got stranded in this land, it feels as if he doesn't have an outlet. He doesn't have a possible future. I could be wrong, but my reading of it felt like that way. Whereas for Bartel, even though he ends up confessing and he gets put into prison and everything, there is still a future for him, right? He's out of the army for sure, dishonorably discharged, right? For sure. So he's no longer a war hero or what have you, right? So he doesn't have that glory, but he's still alive and he is going to be free. And once he's free, he's able to live. He's able to move on with his life with all that trauma still in his mind, but he feels that he's able to move forward. Does Jawad have that? That's my question, right? That hope. Yeah. So, okay, good job. So far, my goodness, I'm enjoying this discussion. So who's next? Who'd like to go next?
I would like to go next.
Okay, go ahead.
So bringing back the theme that I explore in the Corpse Washer, which is escapism, there are several instances of escapism in the Yellowbirds. However, the theme of escapism is also deeply connected with the sense of regret or guilt. So it's something that I find it hard to differentiate between both two. But I would like to start off my discussion by pointing out how in the Corpse Washer, the symbolism of pomegranate is being repeated more than once. It's been repeated several times. And here in the Yellowbird, if you realize, they keep on mentioning about the hyacinth flower. I think hyacinth flower. I think that's how it's pronounced. And I Googled up what's the meaning of the pomegranate and also the hyacinth flower. It's very interesting. Where the pomegranate, it talks about, I think it's about life, if I'm not mistaken, fertility and life, if I'm not mistaken. But the hyacinth actually talks about constancy and also sincerity. And the person who talks or the person who admires about the hyacinth is actually, you can consider him as a traitor. Malik, if I'm not mistaken, the name, because he was giving information. He is the translator for the soldiers. So it's kind of like an irony that he's talking about a flower that symbolize constancy and also sincerity. That's something interesting that I would like to point out. And it also give me like not an idea, it's just like a view on both stories, where in the Corpse Washer it's about it's about the death, and the pomegranate it's about the life. And then here we have the scene which talks about constancy, loyalty, sincerity. But we have Murphy who could not uphold his promise, who actually threw away the body. Yeah, threw away, not Murphy, Bartle, John, who actually threw away his friend's body, covering it up. Instead of getting killed in action, he was listed under missing in action. At that point, I do not really understand why he and Sergeant Sling had to throw his body away, because I mean, like, it's an unfortunate event, but I do not understand why they need to cover up that event. So both symbolism are kind of ironic. And then coming to the theme of escapism, first I would like to point out how Murphy from not Murphy again Murphy. My God, I'm obsessed with Murphy. Sorry, it's Butted. It's John. I would call him John. John, from the very beginning, I think I couldn't find at which page, I don't remember, but I've read that he joined the war because he wants to run away from making decisions. That when he's in war, he is ordered, he receives order, and he will execute the order. He does not need to think. He does not even need to make decisions what to do with his life. So that's the reason why he joins the army. I'm not sure about Murphy because it's not mentioned anywhere why Murphy joins the army. But when we think about it, why would an 18-year-old boy join the army? Why would a 21-year-old boy join the army? For what? For what reason? To protect their country? But they're not protecting their country. They are going to another country and attacking the country, dominating the foreign country. For what? For what reason? So, and then John first escaping from having to make decisions in his life, but later on he's escaping from his guilt that he couldn't bring back Murphy. He couldn't take care of Murphy. So there are a few parts where I think that the theme of escapism plays. Wait, I've tagged it in my book. First, he's trying to escape from, I think from the very beginning, John has a problem already regarding to mental health issues, because when he was talking to Murphy's mother, he did not really want to talk to her because he did not consider Murphy as a friend, but Murphy's mother thought otherwise. So when Murphy's mother asked him to promise her that he would take care of him, he just simply said yes, because he did not want the discussion to be any longer than it already is. To me, as someone who did something like that, I would consider that as a means of escaping from the conversation itself. So I see that as a way of him escaping from conversation, from human interaction. And then he tried to escape from his guilt about Murphy's death by actually sneaking out from the camp when he visited the cathedral. And yeah, it's just a walk, and then he met a priest who asked him whether he would like to talk about anything or not. And again, he refused to talk about his guilt. He refused to talk about what happened to him. And then he and then the escapism, he went to a bar. And this bar, it's very interesting because during the time of the war, he said that, I remember a Cav scout in Al-Tafar writing down the address for me on the torn top of a cigarette pack. Best fucking place in history to get your dick back. Fucking crucial, he said. So I view this bar as an escapism for the soldiers who are involved in the war. So when they are in war, I figured that it would be a stressful time for them, and for them to escape the thoughts of war, they go to this kind of places. Again, they are escaping from war. So it's like I see the escapism theme, but it's like it's not escaping from only one thing. For only one thing, like in the corpse washer, it's clear that Jawa is trying to escape from his occupation that is supposedly has to be transferred to him. He has to upheld the responsibility when his father passed away. But in the Yellow Bird, the escapism is first Murphy, first John escaping from making decisions on about his life, and then he's escaping from guilt that he felt when Murphy died. And now we have the soldiers escaping from war, finding escapism from war, finding distraction from keep on indulging in war. So there's a lot of things, but it's not one strong theme, I believe. And then the most interesting part is for me is when Murphy actually went to I believe it's like a hospital where there's like a paramedics and a nurse assistant there trying to revive a soldier, I believe, but the man later died. It's like Murphy came there, went there every day to see that escaping from the thoughts of people are dying. It's like he's being there because it is mentioned that he went there to look for kind things. Let me pull out. Yeah. Um, it says that place, those little tents at the top of the hill, the small area where she was, it might have been the last habitat for gentleness and kindness that we ever knew. So it made sense to watch her softly sobbing in the open space of a dusty piece of ground. Murph wanted to see something kind. He wanted to choose, he wanted to want, he wanted to replace the dullness growing inside him with anything else. So again, he wanted to escape from war and he wanted to go home. He wanted to take control of his life again. And yeah, that's how I and the fact that now that Sergeant Sterling has committed suicide, they have to put the blame on someone. They have to find the culprit. So John is the one with it. So he's kind of like not because he's a part of it, but he's like a scapegoat for the authority to place the blame on someone. So that's what I see from my reading in under the theme of escapism.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you're right though, because my copy of the Yellow Birds is with somebody, so I'm having to use my iPad for that. You're right. When I did a book search for Hyacinth, there are 7 matches from two different contexts. So from the 2000, from 3 different contexts. September 2004, there is 5 mentioned. March 2005, there's 1 mention, and then October 2004, almost a year later, when Murphy is finally lying lifeless, he describes it as Murphy finally covered in a patch of lifeless hyacinth, resting motionless in the shade of the grass and low branches. So you're right. So hyacinth has that kind of and it looks beautiful, but it's also very subdued. So there is that element there. And you talked about the pomegranate tree in that same way and looking at it symbolically. So there is that possibility of what is the symbolic representation of these images of nature in both novels. So that would be one way to go. You asked a very good question. You didn't understand why they had to cover up Murphy's death. Would anybody like to attempt to answer that?
Can I try?
Go ahead, Huzla.
I think it's because it shows like the weaknesses of them as like a unit. Because like Murphy went missing, right? And when Murphy was missing, I think they were resting or something, so they didn't really realize that Murphy went missing. So it's one is that when Murphy died, they have to answer to the higher officials. So if they find out that it's because of their negligence, then it will be something of a bad image on their unit as a soldier. And also another thing is because they also have to answer to the mother, I think. How do you tell the mother that you know, you lost this kid, like this Murphy, in like when you were resting, and then he is found dead. So that is such a hard thing to explain to a mother. So yeah.
Good points. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? Salim, did you want to say something? Go
Yes,
ahead.
doctor. Yes.
Go ahead.
I do believe that because he promised Morphe's mother to stay with him and keep an eye on him because he was because Morphe was younger than Bottle, so he was feeling guilty because he didn't, for example, as you say, achieved or his promise, or he couldn't keep his promise with his mother. That's why he felt guilty and he felt shy. That's why he didn't return back his body to US. Thank you, doctor.
Could be. Anybody else?
Or was it because, doctor, or was it because I think this is in the behalf of John Buttle. He did not want Murphy's mother to see the state of Murphy's body because the state of Murphy's body is beyond in. I mean, like it's beyond normal. It's definitely making him seem like he was being tortured. So I don't think that John thought that Murphy's mother could stomach that, so maybe that could be the other reason why they threw away Murphy's body instead of like retrieving it.
Could be. Anybody else?
There is that promise to the mother, but I also related it to a soldier's ego. Death is supposed to be glorious. Death is supposed to make you a martyr, and if you die, you become a war hero. But when I read that specific passage, it was very graphic, and the way Bartel described the state of Murphy's body is almost horrifyingly like like he cannot actually look at it. So I always thought he didn't want Murphy to be remembered that way. He didn't want Murphy's uh, soldier reputation. So death for Murphy became some sort of a degradation instead of a validation. The first 200 pages actually glorified the idea of death, and then the climax is when they found Murphy's body. It was so degrading, so graphically, I don't know, shameful, if I may say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's mutilated. The body was mutilated. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also think the same way as Ruby that besides like the mother being one of the factors that they and the other part is the way
Sorry,
that
we
Murphy
missed.
wasn't really
Sorry,
what we call
Lisa.
a glorious way of
Sorry, Lisa. We missed the first part that you said. Could you type it? Could you type it in the chat?
sorry.
Anyone else? Whilst we're waiting for Lisa to type in the chat, anybody else have their own perspective?
And my first impression is that they wanna make it look like an accident. That's all, because it's bad to say it, but of course they don't want to be responsible for somebody's death, although it's he's someone close, he's young and everything. So one way or another, just to make it look like an accident. Yeah.
But why not bring the body home? Why not declare that he died, and which is what they have to declare, because they wouldn't have come home with him. But that's a very good question that that Aimee asked. Why not bring him home? Why ditch him in a foreign land and not give him the right kind of burial and allow some closure for his family? Why do that? Why go through all that trouble to only come home, be traumatized by your actions, and be driven to suicide in Sterling's case?
Yeah, I was thinking that first of all, it's not done by the soldiers themselves. It was done by let's say the rebels, but in actuality the locals. It was done by them. It's not done by the soldiers. What they have to be afraid of, they could just like bring the body back and then just mark it as an accident, because it's not done by them. So I was wondering why.
Okay, but think about, why did Murphy get caught? For the rebels to then have their way with him. Why did he get caught? Were they at crossfires and he got caught then?
No, but I was thinking that if they were to lie about Murphy's death, then why not put the blame on the one who killed them, rather than hiding his death and then putting Murphy's under MIA? It's like, why go why go all the way? Why trouble themselves rather than blaming it on someone else?
Sorry, where is Lisa? Lisa, did you type yet? Have you typed it on?
I'm typing still, doctor.
Okay. Okay. But I want you to think about a slightly bigger picture. How do you sell the war on Iraq to the people in America? How do you sell the idea of coming for the Americans to enlist and serve their nation, if war appears to affect those soldiers in this way? Meaning, going to war causes this kind of not just trauma afterwards, but trauma whilst you are there. How do you sell, quote unquote, sell the idea of serving the nation, of doing good, of going over to Iraq and doing justice, if this is what really happens? If this is the reality of it, that when soldiers go to war, chances are they either become numb to this whole thing, like Sterling. They can go they can go a few times and serve serve their nation this way and not feel anything, or they become like Murphy, where they lose their mind and in their first service. So how do you sell the idea of come and enlist yourself, because being a soldier, it's a glorious thing, exactly like what some of you are saying. How do you sell the idea? Because coming home and saying that Murphy lost his mind, he couldn't do it anymore. He just couldn't participate, and seeing all the death just drove him crazy. Right? Very much like Macbeth's character and Lady Macbeth's character. He was so consumed by his guilt and remorse that it drove him crazy. How do you sell that idea and then still say, all right, those of you who want to serve your nation, do the honorable thing and sign up, and you will be trained, and you will do this honorable thing, and you will come and serve your country. And how do you do that, right? And I think this novel uncovers that ugly side of it in terms of mental and in terms of psychological effects of war on the soldiers, not just not just after the episode, not just PTSD, not just afterwards, but even whilst they are there, because they go on this autopilot. They're just shooting on sight. Like anything that's moving, they shoot, because they're not even thinking anymore, because their emotions have been disconnected, if you like. It's almost like they are numbed by that experience to the extent they are no longer alive. Who quoted that? Lisa said that. What's the point? At what point does the heart becomes dead? Right? And I think that point is also relevant in understanding that they couldn't have that burden on their conscience. That in fact, we lost one of our own, not because of the enemy's bullet, but because he just was not cut out to be a soldier. He didn't have what it takes. A soldier does not feel these kinds of emotion. A soldier just plows on by the command of his authorities. He doesn't question, he doesn't feel. He just does what he's told. Right? So let's read what Lisa has to say. They didn't want the mother to know. Okay, that's what some of you are saying as well, that the son died a horrific death. Murphy didn't die an honorable death. It was almost like attempted suicide. Yeah. Murphy left his post without permission. Good point. Again, that element of you don't have the authority to do this. You live and die by the authority of those in charge of you in that context, in the context of war. And Murphy didn't abide by that, right? So he wasn't a true soldier, if you like, right? So they, and Lisa goes on to say that they didn't want the mother to know her. Okay, sorry, she repeats that point. Yeah. So I concur with all of you. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, and I think that's the beauty of the novel, that it allows the reader a perspective, and it allows the American readers especially a stop and reflect moment. Like, come on, ask yourself, is this something relevant to us? Is this something what we want our young men and even women to partake in, to be participating in, and to come back with this kind of trauma that they have to live with? Or worse still, they don't even get to live with because they die even there. Right? So it's not a statistical number that they want to have, if you like, because it reflects poorly on them. Okay? So I agree with you, all of you actually. Okay, so who wants to go next? Who hasn't gone yet?
I don't mind. Me first or Fuzla, I don't mind.
Go ahead. Who wants to go next?
Okay then.
All right.
Okay. I have written something, but I have also realized another thing, but I think I'll go slowly lah. Okay. Hope you guys are not sleepy yet. So my first impression of this novel, as I've said last 2 weeks, I think it's intense. And then
sorry. Can I stop you? Okay. I had a point for Aimee and I completely forgot.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Sorry. Aimee, oh my goodness gracious. We hadn't finished with Aimee's yet, because when you were talking, Aimee, sorry, I get excited. Excuse me for getting jittery. So when you were talking about the theme of escapism, okay, the word escapism means not dealing with reality, right? So it's almost like when you escape, you don't want to face what horror is before you. But this notion of escape literature is something that means slightly different. Okay, so the theme of escapism means not wanting to deal with reality, doing something other than whatever is you're having to face with. Basically, you are either not facing up to your responsibilities, not facing up to your state of emotions, and all the rest of it. But this subgenre called escape literature means something else. Okay, I'm just going to go straight to the last part. Escape literature wants to take us away from reality, immersing us in a whole new world, right? The opposite of that is interpretive literature, which seeks to help readers understand deeper questions of life, death, hate, love, sorrow, and other elements of existence. Whilst it can be entertaining, it is not the goal to entertain. So I want you to kind of think about that idea of interpretive literature and how it draws the reader's attention to, issues of life, death, hate. So I was playing with the idea of the theme of escapism against escape literature, which is what these two novels are not. Right? These two novels are the complete opposite because they don't help you escape the reality. They immerse you in the reality of death and horrors of death and war and that sense of hopelessness and bleak living and trauma and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to kind of draw your attention. So if you are interested to explore that further, you may explore interpretive literature and see how it questions and what deeper, what did I write here? How does each novel deal with these themes, these deeper and sometimes harder themes to deal with, which is death and hate and love and sorrow and all these elements of the human existence, but not painted with a kind of a broad stroke of happily ever after. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Doctor, I want to say something on the escape literature because I read a article, a book. It's reading the romance, blah blah, and in the book, the author interviews lots of readers about what is the successful romance and the failed romance. The successful romance make readers, especially women readers, to escape their problems in their real life, and otherwise the failed romance makes they realize their problem, and so they don't want to read it again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it correlates with the idea of the escape literature. You're right, because this notion of an escape literature, it has a kind of more positive, feel good sensation of it, rather than, because these two novels, as all of you would have identified, it's not a feel good read. This is far from, if you want a feel good read, you run the opposite direction. So yeah, but I agree with what you were saying as well. Thank you for that, Alice. Sorry, Shah, go ahead, take over.
Okay, so yeah. I'll go very slowly because I'm scared that I will, forget some points. So I feel like if I were to compare both Corpse Washer and Yellow Birds, they share okay, at first I put existentialism, like I've said last 2 weeks, like that. As both of the main characters, though may not have any chance to decide upon themselves at the beginning, along the way, or towards the end of the both story, they develop through acts of their will. And I found, I I think just now, Aimee has mentioned that line. I found Bato said something about Murph. He wanted to choose, he wanted to want. So I think I highlighted that one. And then focusing on John Bato and Daniel Murphy in their own ways as they suffer mentally from the never-ending pointless war. At first, I see Murph's choice as something that his mental and body, I would say, needed at the moment. He already suffered since the death of the medical assistant that he visited. That he actually found peace by observing her. Maybe some sort of a break to see humanity instead of brutality, like we have discussed as well. There's this part where the soldiers need to fill in the questionnaire to rate their emotional state, and the answers were only to choose from A, if they're delighted, or B, malaise. And then towards the end, I think it gives me as a reader peace when Bato has moved to his cabin, also making peace with the war and brutality. And then he finally tries to let go of the death of Murph. But I also, talking about existentialism, I think it's more towards like, I searched like existential crisis, also known as existential dread, moments when individuals question whether their lives have meaning, purpose, or value, and are negatively impacted by contemplation. So when they all have purpose, right? So I think things that have been happening to them is some sort of like it disturbed their purpose, or maybe that line actually got me, like the disturbance in their purpose individually, I would say. Yeah. That's very short, right? But yeah, that's what I can see from both. Yeah.
I'm just Googling myself. Lisa keeps coming in and out. What's
I
the
think
deal?
it has to do with her connection, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the line is pretty bad, but the recording will be, so hopefully she can catch up. I'm just Googling existential crisis in war narrative.
Okay.
And there is definite, oh sorry, I haven't shared.
Okay. I think
And
it's
there is
broad also, doctor. So I think it's broad, like if you want to touch exclusively on existentialism or existential crisis, yeah.
and because of the breadth of the topic, you may want to focus on maybe symptoms of existential crisis in both novels.
Symptoms.
And you may, rather than look at, so for instance, this paper on Hamlet, focusing on Hamlet primarily. You may also look at it from a more holistic perspective of how. So it's not about the impact of it on the two characters that you have chosen, rather on the readers reading it. So we readers reading it comparatively, we're not Americans and neither are we Iraqi except for Salim.
Okay.
How do we swallow this? So this is back to interpretive literature and asking us to deal with these very difficult questions, right? Questions that we might not be affected with directly, right? Because we're not in that context, but questions that we need to deal with because it affects humanity.
Yeah.
Right? So you may look at this potential paper, for instance, right? Within the context of America, of course, but broadly. And then you may look at the way it was from the First World War's perspective, which is, just under 100 years ago, right? Because we're already 2021. So you may actually pursue that discussion. So I would say definitely, if you're interested, looking at the existential crisis. So maybe look at how and what, not necessarily the solution, because if you remove the war narrative, there is there is a kind of a like solution to this cause. There is ways to
Okay.
overcome it. You may not find that in the corpse washer,
Yeah.
because Sinan doesn't propose that there is a kind of a quick fix to the situation in Iraq. He's quite a realist. So very much an interpretive literature subgenre rather than an escapist kind, right? Not an escape literature genre. So there isn't a kind of a point to discuss what's the way out of this, what's the solution of this. So there isn't a point to that, because the novel doesn't lend itself for this kind of a discussion. But the novel definitely lends itself for the discussion of the theme of existential crisis, both novels, in fact, except that the Yellow Bird, the soldiers leave that war zone. They go back to the comfort of their home, albeit the trauma and the crisis is still in their mind. Around them, things are a lot more peaceful, a lot more settled. Jawad doesn't have that luxury, right? Jawad is not a soldier in the context of war, but the trauma is within him, is constantly being consumed by it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you and others have also said that he was seeing, he gets like these visions, these apparitions, right? Of seeing the girlfriend, images of the
Yeah.
girlfriend, seeing the the old man with the white beard. So he gets these glimpses that he's not sure whether it's reality or it's nightmare, or it's, is he hallucinating? Is it what's going on? So that crisis has manifested in Jawad's situation. It has manifested into his, it permeated into his subconscious and conscious mind. What about in Murphy? Again, I would say the crisis is more with Murphy rather than Bartel. Murphy, to an extent, Sterling. But I would say, just if you are interested to pursue this for the seminar, I would just say choose one character and compare it with Jawad.
Okay.
And that's definitely a theme worth exploring for these two novels.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Sorry, Salim, did you want to say something? Okay. Fuzla, would you like to finish us off with your thoughts?
Yes. But I'll be a bit brief.
No worries,
That's
it's okay. Fuzla wrote to me
I
earlier saying
actually
that she's
have
not
a lot to talk about.
but I just want to hear all
Yeah,
your thoughts. So no pressure. Yeah. I'm not grading you today.
Okay.
But it would be nice to have everyone share their thoughts. So yeah, please share whatever you can.
Yes, Doctor, can I continue?
Okay.
Salim, just give Fuzla a second.
Sorry, Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead. So Fuzla.
It's okay. 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 When I was reading Kevin Powers' The Yellowbirds, there's this recurrent theme that I think can be a point of convergence with Sinan Antun's The Corpse Washer, which is the concept of home and belongingness. First, what attracts me to the concept of home is that in Kevin Powers' The Yellowbirds, Murphy keeps talking about him wanting to come back home, which is the ideal home, which is US. Basically, it's a physical home. And what I think, because concept of home is basically it can be the physical home, which is like the building, a house itself, or a nation, something geographical, but it also can be like somewhere that you feel safe, a safe space for you, somewhere that is a refuge, a safe haven for you, right? So what I think the difference between Kevin Powers, The Yellowbirds, and also Sinan Anton's corpse washer is that in Kevin Powers' The Yellowbird, when I would focus on Barthel in here. When Barthel is in Iraq, his ideal sense of home, he he lost that ideal sense of home because he sees all these destructions and all this death, and he was traumatized by the experience, and he saw how the soldiers are killing all these people, and he brings that guilt and brings that conscience, and that guilt and conscience kind of destroys his ideal home. That in that sense, when he went back to his physical home, it doesn't feel like home anymore. He doesn't feel like he belongs there because of his guilt. And as you can see later in the book, when he was imprisoned, he thinks that the prison feels more like home than his previous physical home because of that guilt, and because he has lost that ideal sense of home. Whereas in Sinan Anton's The Corpse Washer, it's the loss of physical home, the loss of like the place where he lives is in war. He lost his father. There's a lot of death, and the university where he um, was educated from, the library was demolished, the arts department was bombed, so he lost his physical home, which then leads to his loss of ideal home, his identity, his belongingness to the arts and all that, and he has to take this responsibility as a corpse washer. So he lost that his feelings of belongingness to the his artistic side, his aspiration of life, and yeah, and that is because he has lost his physical home, and by the end of the novel, he also tries to flee from the place where he lives because of the war, right? So I think, yeah, I think that is the points of divergence if we would like to focus on these two characters. So, yes.
You're right. I googled home for the Yellowbirds. There are 45 mentions of the word home in different contexts. Even the final statement by Murphy's mom. So from December 23rd, which is at the beginning of the story, to March 2000, December 2003, March 2005, September 2004, March 2005. So it's back and forth, back and forth America, and whilst they're in the context of Iraq, and the image of home keeps being brought up again and again. And I like what you said about how Barthel's guilt make him feel homeless. You talked about being without home, or being without a sense of belonging, but yeah, how the guilt consumes you to the extent that you do not feel a sense of home. And coming to terms with his wrongdoing, in fact, allows him to resolve that guilt, and allows him to feel a sense of completeness. So maybe that notion of home is that idea of that you are complete, and your sense of personhood is complete, psychologically, emotionally, you're complete. Where else, when you have a sense of guilt or shame, even there's a gap in your psyche that does not allow you to accept you for your complete whole self, and hence you don't feel a sense of home. So it's a concept worth exploring, that this idea of home. I remember exploring this at my master's thesis, looking at this concept of home as well. And I remember this one article that I read, and in that article, the woman was asked, "Where is your home?" And she said, "Where my cat is." So wherever I can be with my cat, that's my home. So oh my God, it sounds like a song. It should be a pop song. Somebody should write a song with that. But that idea of home in that abstract concept compared to that idea of home in a very ingrained, rooted in your land kind of a concept is something that we can continuously explore, because you will see that also in the hate you give, that theme of, because for minorities, where is that element of home, especially if the land that you call home do not see you as part of them, because you're a minority and you're disenfranchised and you're not welcomed in that space, right? For Trevor Noah in Born a Crime, the land doesn't value you as one of them. So how do you value that sense of home if the land doesn't value you? So I like that idea of homeless due to various reasons. But in the case of Bartel, it's because of guilt. What about in the case of Jawad? What causes him to be disconnected? So if you brainstorm the idea of home dash less homeless, then you talk about that idea. If I had a whiteboard here with me, I'll start to scribble. I just feel lost without it. But you just imagine putting the word home and put a stroke, you put the word less, homeless. What ideas come to mind? Maybe disconnection, maybe as Fuzla said, that idea of belonging, or lost of sense of belonging. And what else? How else can you probe this further? So just from that trajectory alone, looking at that theme of homelessness, not homeless because you are without a home, a physical home, but homeless because you are not rooted, you're not connected, you're not feeling whole, right? So in a sense, Jawad goes through that experience as well, so picking up on Lisa's point earlier, which is when the heart is dead, not literal death, but when you die before your time, basically, when you're no longer feeling the joy of life. In that sense, you are also incomplete. You are also kind of like, you're fragmented, you're fractured. So when you are in a state of homeless, from this trajectory of looking at homeless because you don't feel good about yourself, you don't feel happy with you because you've done something awful, right? And that causes you to feel broken, right? Like Bartel feels. Murphy felt that, and it drove him to insanity. What about Jawad? Does that similar experience mirror his life as well? So that's something to kind of probe, because I think that's what's happening to Jawad as well. Not because he's not at home, but because he's not at home in himself. He's no longer happy with his life. He's no longer home in his life. Being able to sculpture was what brought him joy. Not being able to do that, washing the dead bodies one after another every single day, that robs him of his joy of life. So he's no longer at peace with himself. He's no longer doing what brings him joy. That in itself causes him to also not feel a sense of home within his own environment. So that's something worth exploring. So thank you for that, Fuzla. Salim, you wanted to say something?
Yes, doctor. In fact, or I wanted just to add something else. What made Bartel not to return the corpse of the body of his friend Murphy? I do believe that maybe he was already feeling, he's already traumatized, and he didn't want his mother also to go with the same way, or to be traumatized. Number one. Number two, you said why do people, for example, in America, let's say, why do they came and fight Iraq? And I do believe because mass media in America, they give a bad image about the Iraqi people. and in particular, for example, in some cities, for example, let me say Mosul, the city of Nabiullah Yunus. And let me tell you one thing. In Mosul, there are, for example, as we say, shrinks of 5 prophets: Nabiullah Yusuf, Nabiullah Daniel, Nabiullah Sheet, Nabiullah Jarjis. So America gave a bad image, bad impression about the Iraqi people to their soldiers. That's why they kill Iraqi people in a cold-blooded. And this is, I remember something, this is a kind of Orientalism. If you go back to John Said, you will find that after the publishing of John Said's book, people started to stand against the will of America to invade Iraq. And I do believe, this is my opinion, mass media played a big role in that. And if the mass media gave a real image about the reality of Iraq and the people of Iraq, I don't believe that this kind of brutality, this kind of cruelty happened with the Iraqi people at that time. Thank you, Doctor.
All right, thank you, Salim. I think it correlates with what you said as well. This notion of the discrepancies and in the depiction, and I didn't realize about the prophets, that the significance of Mosul. So thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. I didn't realize. I agree with you. There is something to explore, especially with regards to how Iraq is depicted, and which is why I began our discussion with the corpse washer. I didn't want to start with the yellow bird. I wanted you all to explore the corpse washer first and got the feel of it, and then found a text that is comparable to it. So I wanted corpse washer to be in the center rather than an American text to be in the center, So I think this is one thing I would suggest to all of you for your seminar. So now we're done with corpse washer and the yellow bird in terms of our tutorial discussion. And I thought all of you did very well. So a round of applause to everybody for a very engaging discussion, and I sincerely mean that. So have a listen to the recording afterwards. You will see that you all made some awesome points. Now it's about asking yourself these difficult, challenging questions. Okay. So if I was going to compare any 2 texts for my seminar, if I was going to compare any 2 texts, which 2 texts would I compare it to, right? And this is due next week. I can push it back by another week, but this is due next week, which means, I don't want you to waste too much time coming up with a new topic and a new corpus. You already have based on your today's discussion, you already have some ideas based on the 2 novels. So my strong recommendation is for you, because we are now week 8, we're supposed to have the workshop, but like I said, we can push it back by another week. We have a couple more parameters to go through, but we can push it back, no worries. But my recommendation is for you to use the corpus that you have studied, which right now is the yellow bird and the corpse washer. Okay. Unless you have other texts based on your other courses that you want to kind of bring in, my recommendation is for the second assignment, which is the seminar, looking at comparative literature across national literary canon, across time and space. I would highly recommend that you use the yellow bird and the corpse washer as your primary focus. Okay, so that way you get to do a couple of things. You get to answer the e-task, which is to compare the yellow bird with the corpse washer. Okay. And you get to do your assignment. You get to do this seminar. because all of you have very unique perspectives of these two novels, and it'll be worth to kind of listen to the presentation, to your seminar presentation, if you explore that. Okay, so my recommendation is very much for you to focus on those two. So next week, I would like you to do it as a consultation. Use it as a consultation for the seminar, only for Monday and Tuesday. But Thursday, I want to see your presentation if possible. Okay, so I'm not going to push the seminar by a week if possible, but if you're really stuck and you're like, can we have another week? That's no problem. But I strongly recommend that you proceed with what you have prepared. So in a sense, today's session is like the workshop week, because I've given you some pointers, I've given you some ideas on how to proceed. Fuzla, did you put up your hand?
No.
Oh, okay. Because your hand raise is, the icon is there. Okay. So consider today's session as very much the consultation session, but instead of one-on-one, I'm having it as a group. But if you want to talk to me individually starting tomorrow about your seminar, you can. Okay, starting tomorrow, you can. And then Monday and then Tuesday. So Thursday, I would like to see your actual seminar, meaning Thursday you do the second assignment. Is that all right with everybody? Because I want to move on to the next corpus and the next parameter, because I don't want to push this this is already week 8, so you've got week 9 next week, and then, you've got 4 more weeks and semester's done. Khalas, finish. So if we push it, then you are going to eat up into revision week, into exam week, and you don't want to do that. You want to try to kind of like plow through as much as you can. Plus this is I'm looking at a 15-minute presentation from everybody. And what that means is this is a seminar, okay? A seminar means you get to engage with your classmates. You get to maybe pose a question and start by looking at their thoughts and then moving on from there. So a seminar allows you room to create discussion points. So it's not like reading your essay. Okay, that's not the point. The point is for you to propose certain ideas and to kind of get the discussion going. But ultimately, you are focusing on the issues that you have identified, keeping in mind that the issue of comparative literature is paramount. What do I mean by that? You cannot compare, you cannot read one text in isolation of another. I'm not asking you to read The Corpse Washer and then do a reading of The Yellow Bird. No, you are going to be comparing the corpus that you have identified. Maybe something else, but you have to compare the corpus, right? The two texts. And because of that, you have to start on the premise of, what are you doing? You're doing comparative literature, which means you have to choose texts that are from two different national canons, and hence the definition of comparative literature comes in, right? So your choice of text is based on your definition of literary canon, okay? So you don't need to overtly say what is your definition of comparative literature and how does that justify your choice of literary canon. You don't need to say that. But obviously, when you identify your corpus, you are indirectly identifying your definition of comparative literature. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then the more important thing is the theme. So, all of you had your own respective takes on the two novels. Obviously, there will be some overlapping, but I think your perspective is quite unique. So that's the perspective that we want to kind of celebrate, right? So that's the choice of theme that you want to celebrate. This is when I think consultation might be useful. in order for you to kind of really identify clearly what is the focus that you are looking at. Some of you say you are interested in, for instance, death and casualty, like Lisa started off by looking at that. But in fact, my suggestion for Lisa is more about comparing the two main characters of the two novels. Jawad, not my main character, sorry, the two characters, Jawad, the main character in The Corpse Washer, and Murphy, a minor character in Yellow Birds, and comparing them more for empath, right? So from the discussion when Lisa was talking about heroes, what makes a hero, and then I showed some ideas of qualities of a hero, somebody who's empathetic, somebody who's caring. So you looked at the notion of empathy, and you realize that both characters, Jawad and Murphy, embodies the empath more than the hero, that all-consuming empathetic quality where they carry other people's burden to the extent that they cause damage on themselves, right? So that could be a theme. So this is where I feel consultation would be very, very useful. And then the analysis, I think it's pretty straightforward. You find excerpts from both novels that best illustrates the themes. But I feel that based on today's discussion, I feel that kind of what you're interested in, but you need to kind of hone in more clearly, have a clear structure, and then come and talk to me either on Monday or on Tuesday. Wednesday is a public holiday. I forget what. Is it Wednesday or Wednesday? I think it's a public holiday. I forget for what.
Yep, it's Wednesday.
I think it's Wesak Day or something. Or yeah.
Yes, Wesak Day.
Yeah. So I would say Monday and Tuesday. I would be free for consultation, right? And then that gives you Wednesday to put everything together. And then Thursday, we have the seminar. Is that all right with everyone? Yeah?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, because I'm not asking you for anything, and no writing. You're not submitting anything. Notice, right? So you're not having to submit like a video essay or an essay or a final project. You're not having to do that. It's more about having some ideas and thoughts and then creating a conversation like this. You will be assessed based on that. I'll send you the rubrics as well. You'll be assessed on that. Is that okay? Okay, yeah. So engage your classmates. Lisa, you put up, Shah, you put up your hand.
Thumbs up.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, this one doesn't have it. But like I said, don't do a one-way presentation where you're just talking and engage with your classmates. I want to see engagement in your session when you present your seminar. I want to see engagement with your classmates. So I'm going to kind of say we'll most probably be using the full 3 hours. So bring extra coffee. If you have a flask, keep a coffee handy and coffee or tea or hot chocolate or whatever your fancy beverage is. But we probably will be doing the full 3 hours. So if you can each prepare something concrete, I think we're going to have a great discussion session, inshallah. Okay, but do consult with me starting tomorrow, and I think you will have a clearer sense of your focus. Okay, and you may use PowerPoint, you may use Word, you may if you've got some if you're able to doodle on the screen, if you've got touch screen, you want to doodle on the screen, you can. So whatever works. It's your actual day's presentation that I will evaluate you on. And I think all of you are on track. You have a clear idea. Now it's just a matter of researching a little bit more on each one that you have focused on and bringing something more solid. Maybe show us, have excerpts that you want to kind of dissect. Ask critical questions. So you're given, I would say, given 20 minutes each. which is a lot of time. But at the same time, if you have a lot of things to say, you might feel like 20 minutes is too limited. So I'm okay with being flexible with the time. Okay? Any questions? And we're just going to go around my screen. Fuzla, starting with my left. Fuzla, any questions? Comments, questions, any thoughts?
Not really at the moment.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But do meet up with me for consultation. Yeah.
Okay.
Salim, any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
Doctor, maybe is it possible for me to add something from my context as a Iraq, because I'm one of the residents of Mosul. Mosul, the city of Tafar. It's not Tafar, it's Tal Afar. I belong to this city, so I can add something new to the context of the idea, Doctor.
Yeah. Okay. You can, provided there is a comparison being made here. So we're not looking at your perspective compared to Kevin Powers' perspective, because that's not comparative literature. Yeah. So you still need to bring a text that is written about Mosul or set within Mosul that that you can compare to the yellow birds. So your perspective would be the insider's reading of it, which I think is crucial. So you looked at this notion of discrepancies in terms of representation. So I would say explore the insider-outsider lens, the post-colonial notion of the insider-outsider lens, explore that further. You talked about truth, the importance of truth, and that can also be explored. But I like very much when you talked about remorse and how remorse affects, psychologically affects more than trauma. The guilt, the remorse that you feel, remorse caused by inflicting pain on others. But at the same time, can the same theme be seen in the corpse washer? If it cannot, then you may need to find another text. So at this short hour, I don't want you to have to find another text. So stick to the two novels and find something that you find relevant. Come and then talk to me about it. Because I want you to be on track, rather than on Thursday you present something and then it falls through. Okay?
Inshallah ta'ala.
All right. Shah?
Yeah, I think I will meet you during consultation, and I'll bring things that I have with me so far. I think I'll do that
All right.
for now.
Thank you. Alice?
So far, I'm okay, Doctor. I think if I have question, I will ask you during my consultation next week. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes, doctor. I think after you've explained about the empath concept a bit more, I think that's what I'm leaning more towards to, and I think that's what I'll focus on. But I think I'll try to meet you next week, either on Monday or Tuesday for consultation. Yeah.
Can. That's possible. Aimee? Cannot hear Aimee.
Yeah.
Can hear you. I'm it is the same thing like just now. Yeah.
But her mic is on, but
yeah, because just now in Dr. Zalina's class we had the same problem. Every time she plugs it in her earphone, but then it will be okay if she takes off her earphone.
Yeah, she's coming in a minute. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it because it's Google Meet, or what did you guys use with Dr. Zalina?
Google Meet. But I think sometimes
Meet,
sometimes some earphones they are not able to function as microphone as well.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah, it's very clear now.
Yeah, I think it might be due to the internet connection too, because I'm no longer in KL now. I'm in Johor, so the internet connection here is like very terrible. But I have a question regarding the seminar.
Yeah.
Since you said that you want us instead of just like a merely presentation, we should be engaged with our classmates, right? So is it possible to actually show like a few, not a few, if there's because I have in mind to find like a short clip of videos about the soldiers, like short clips of them. So would it be possible to play it during the class session as a part of the seminar as well?
The problem is the audio, because I've tried myself. I find that I have no idea. Apparently, the connection or something that so unless you share it with us via WhatsApp, and then you know get us to view it beforehand, or get us to view during the session, give us some time, we view on our own device. That's a possibility.
I see, I see, I see. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. That's all.
Yeah, no worries. Just a second, huh? Ruby, did I go the right way? Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for asking a lot of very vital questions, Doctor. I think the questions really help us navigate both stories. But I was really affected when you asked the question, how is the war being sold by America? Because it's happening right now, as you can see. And then I've been jumping into the bandwagon, and I've been reading Noam Chomsky. So it is very interesting. I didn't notice it until I read him, the word American imperialism, and to see it happening in Iraq, and obviously years before that, and then to see it happening now. So why did characters like Murphy and Bartel, as young men, buy into the idea of war? I guess because the idea of American imperialism. So that is the macro level of things. And then micro, you have everything that we're talking right now: death, remorse, trying to be a hero. And then Shah went with existentialism, which I was very impressed about what existentialist. So I think that is sometimes, I don't know, every time we discuss new novels, I always find new things to wonder about. Yes, I'm very grateful.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate that. I think, you see, it is always about us asking the critical question as readers. That's the purpose of interpretive literature, and hence we as readers need to interpret what we read rather than let it wash over us. We need to interpret and ask these critical questions. And I think we are in fact also showing the writers, the authors, that look, hey, you write all these things, and we're going to read it, and we're going to kind of make sense of it and question you on it. We're going to give it the right time of day, rather than we just read it and we think it's great, or we think it's tragic, or we come up with these one word labels that doesn't do justice to the novels that has been written, because they were written from very personal experiences, right? So I think that's thank you for saying that. Before I forget, I'll share on the WhatsApp, I'll share with you the rubric of the seminar. But I just want to kind of give you a quick rundown before we conclude today's session. So for the seminar, obviously I'm looking at this. I will fine tune the content to the specifics of our seminar. But I'm looking at content, I'm looking at discussion, obviously language and organization, as well as the presentation. So when we talk about presentation, this is when you get a chance to show your effectiveness at engaging your class, So you don't want to have a moderate or ineffective facilitation of discussion. You want to try to reach for the more effective or a very effective facilitation, which carries 4 marks. So altogether it will be 20 marks. So this is how I will be evaluating you. Okay. So I will share the rubrics specifically based on next week's seminar on the WhatsApp, so that you get a sense of what am I being evaluated for, so that you are prepared in advance. Okay? Any questions? So thank you so much for the session. I've enjoyed the discussion immensely. I look forward to our sessions, because I get the feeling that you all have a lot of things that you wanna say about the things that you read, and I think that's the best kind of readers. Readers that have something to say based on what they read, what they watch, what they listen to. They make the best kind of readers, because they engage with the text that they read. Okay, so thank you. Message me when you want to see me for consultation. Don't wait too late. Try to see me early on, so that it gives you time to modify your work, to fine tune your work a little bit, right? And you also get a break, a vacation break, a day off. All right, so I will see you, inshallah, for consultation, and then I will see you on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Okay, bye everybody.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much, Doctor.
Doctor, thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye,
Be
everyone.
safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Salam.